I'd like to just give you a few size-inclusive tips. So first, let's talk about standing postures. Primarily, mountain pose is taught with feet hip width apart. And in Ashtanga yoga, it's taught with feet together. I personally have always had knock knees, so this has never felt stable in my body. It's never felt comfortable. And hip width apart, though it works for me, it doesn't work for all bodies. If you have more flesh in the thigh area, especially more firm adipose flesh, then even hip width apart might not feel stable or supportive. And that's really the point, is you want to feel stable and have a firm foundation. So the way to do that is to move the feet further apart until you feel stable. You can have a wider stance in mountain pose. It's about stability as the foundation, always. If you're starting to come into a forward fold, there's another place to just kind of test the waters to see if you have enough room. I personally have chronic illness that causes a lot of distension in the belly, and it fluctuates day to day. So I start to notice really when I fold forward, sometimes it's just so much compression that I can barely breathe at all. So I will even widen my stance further as I start to fold forward, and then just shift the belly flesh to the inside of the thighs so that I'm able to feel a little more space and breathe in this posture. You can see that I also have a little bend in my knees. This is another great thing to practice, especially if you have hypermobility issues where the connective tissue in your body is damaged. Keeping a little bend in the knees and keeping the tailbone softened. This is going to cause the glutes to be working in a forward fold. And you'll just get a little more ease and depth, still protecting the joints, still protecting the connective tissue. I like to use blocks under my hands a lot when I'm doing anything with my hands down in some sort of folded position. Next, let's talk about transitions from down dog. I like to keep the blocks nearby for these as well. So let's say we're already in our down dog. Again, your feet might be more than hip distance apart. That's totally fine. If you're stepping forward from down dog into a warrior pose or standing pose, lifting the leg first, bending the knee, drawing it in, but toward the outside of your hip here. And then shifting forward like you're coming to plank, stacking shoulders above the wrists, and step the foot down along the outer edge of your mat. So here, I'll move my blocks, you can see. So this is outside my shoulder, outside my hand. That allows me to get a little more distance. I can get my foot a little further without any force. It's just because my belly is falling inside my thigh, and that gives me room to step forward. And then I like to bring blocks under my hands, especially for runner's lunge, low lunge, lizard pose, things like that. But let's say we're getting into runner's lunge from here, so we still have the back foot up on the ball of the foot, and then I would just heel toe that right foot in so that it's more between the hands or closer to that right hand. And then the knee is bent above the ankle, maybe further back, but I'm checking in with the belly, making sure that flesh is inside the thigh to give me a little more room. If I'm coming into low lunge or lizard, I like to have a blanket under the back knee. Anytime my knees are down, I like to have a folded blanket. But this is another place where you're going to really have the belly closer to the leg. So if you've got belly flesh, slip it inside the thigh to give yourself a little more ease and comfort. And I will adjust the block height depending on the day, depending on how much space I feel like I need in the abdomen. This can be used with lizard pose when you've got your foot on the outer edge of the mat. I often will rest my forearms on blocks here. Scoot forward a little more. And next I'd like to show you child's pose. So with child's pose, typically the tops of the feet are flat on the mat or as flat as your body comfortably allows, and the big toes are touching. Some teachers teach knees together, some further apart. I have never found it comfortable knees together, and I, especially with my chronic illness, as I've had more distension in the abdomen, that is just horribly uncomfortable for my body. So I like to say spread your knees as far as feels comfortable to you. I'm actually going to adjust my blanket too because this isn't quite enough space. There we go. And then before I start leaning too far forward, I'm walking the hands down slowly and slowly moving them forward, and then just shifting the belly flesh inside the thighs as needed. If my hips are tight, my tailbone might be higher. If you have adipose flesh in your thighs, or just more flesh in your booty and leg area, then having your seat resting on your heels might not be anatomically possible, and that is absolutely okay. So it's, again, just finding a way to make it comfortable for you. I like to sometimes place a block under the top of my forehead. And this can be at any height. That's one thing I love about these thicker blocks too. I feel like you just get a lot more, you can make them so much taller, thicker, they feel more stable under you. This would be good for elevating the forehead if there's more flesh in the belly or the chest area. Just getting the head off the ground so that you have more room for things to rest without compression, without that suffocation that the flesh can give. Also in a twist. So a lot of times when I sit on the ground, I'll actually fold the blanket and just sit with my tailbone elevated so my hip flexors can open up. Some people like to put blocks side by side. This can also be great if you have a lot of, if you have adipose flesh or more flesh in the booty space, and it just allows you to get a little more space below you so that the hip flexors can open up in that seated position. As you go into a twist, we always engage the outer thigh of the opposite leg first, so that's our root down place in this posture. And then as you start to twist, twisting first at the waist, and this is where you can start to notice what's happening with that extra flesh. You can lift and shift the flesh on top of the thigh, and that can help you get a little more depth with a sense of ease instead of compressing, forcing yourself into a shape. And then with this hand, there's so many different variations. If you've got shorter arms and a larger chest, you might prefer to just bring this hand to the opposite shoulder. You might prefer to rest it on a block on the opposite knee. That's an option as well. It's basically like adding length to your arm so that you can still stay tall. And if you have a large chest and there's that compression thing going on, you can take the opposite hand. So if you're turning to the right, bring your right hand under the left side, and then just swoop the arm under and bring it across to the opposite leg. The goal in a twist is really just to make sure that you're still finding length. And if you're engaging that opposite outer thigh, that's going to help get that twisting sensation without forcing yourself into a shape. And then you always have the option to turn your head if needed. So with these size-inclusive principles, the goal is really just to teach you to be more aware of the sensation you're having in your body so that you can prioritize sensation over shape duplication. Even when we were in child's pose, I'll have another whole video tutorial of child's pose variations, and I'll show you how you can use a bolster and folded blankets to find even more comfort with making space for a larger chest or a larger belly, and still finding the resting, restorative sensation that you're looking for. So if you do have any other questions, please feel free to reach out, Stephanie@GrandCanyonYoga.com, or just use the contact form on my website.